Well, folks, here again for the weekly forecast. Of course, during this last week, we dealt with a big system that came out of the Central Rockies and dropped some significant moisture across a considerable portion of the state. In fact, we have some locations in west central and central Nebraska that were up near the 1¼ to 1½ inch range in terms of liquid moisture. And so when we think about that, that equates out to nearly double what we would expect to see during the month of December. And if you start to look at the entire state, this precipitation event brought anywhere from 40 to 80% of our annual winter precipitation. Now that counts for the December through February period. That's what we would typically expect, about 1½ inches in western Nebraska liquid equivalent. In southeastern Nebraska, somewhere between 2¼ to 2½ inches. And then of course we had another system that just skirted to the south of Nebraska but did bring some accumulating snowfall to southeast and south central Nebraska. Totals anywhere from just a dusting to upwards of 3 to 4 inches right along the Kansas border. Now, as we go through this weekend, we have yet another system coming out, at least during the latter half of the weekend, and more importantly, a rather aggressive pattern looking to shape up right for the Christmas holiday period. So let's take a look at the upper models and see what we can expect. First of all, here's this troughing pattern, kind of got little waves in the atmosphere, and there is a little bit of energy in the mid layers of the atmosphere that's going to pass through the state today that could actually generate some very, very light precipitation, particularly over the northern 1/3 of the state. And most of this will probably be during the evening to overnight hours. And as we go into tomorrow, we'll notice that this trough starts to deepen, and this is going to bring precipitation to western Nebraska. And then it will slowly start to spread toward eastern Nebraska. Temperatures at the surface at the onset of this precipitation event will be above freezing, so we would expect this to start out as a liquid event, changing over as the cool air comes in to more of a solid type precipitation event for western Nebraska. Eastern Nebraska, we may have to wait till late in the night hours of Sunday into the early Monday morning hours before we start to see that transition, but you can see that the cold air starts to funnel in, and this system will really energize itself as it moves into the eastern United States and bring a fairly significant storm to much of southern Ontario and the northeastern United States. As we get into Tuesday, you can see the system really starts to dip down deep, and then it's going to explode as it moves toward the northeast, and we see this cold fetch of air, so below normal temperatures are expected. As we get into Wednesday, we start to see this low starting to pivot around the Great Lakes region, and I'll draw your attention to this short wave that's starting to move through. It's going to be able to tap this cold air and start to generate precipitation, particularly during the overnight hours across western Nebraska. And by the time we get to Thursday, the system, as it drops down into southeast Colorado, we'll start to see a more general snowfall accumulations occurring across western Nebraska and western Kansas, and that will spread eastward during the day, and we could see some significant accumulations. Please keep a check of the weather. This models right now are all over the place in terms of the intensity of the storm, but they are bringing a common denominator together, and that is some inclement weather that will cause some travel problems across the central United States. Time we get to Friday, of course, the system rapidly moves to our east, and we're in this cool northerly flow. So as we look at the temperature forecast, the warmest conditions are this weekend. Then we get a cool down as we go to the middle of the week with that impending snow event for Christmas. And then very cold conditions set up immediately after that. 8 to 14 day forecast keeps the cold air in place at least through almost the end of the month in terms of precipitation. Looking at still above normal precipitation, but I'll remind you that this cold air that is in place will move to our east, and warmer weather will move in at the first of the month.